What if I told you that I just saw a movie and it blew my mind? Like, figuratively, my mind just blew up. And you might be able to guess what that movie is. You might not. You might not. But most likely you will. And that's probably because the main character that was in it, has been around for 75 years. 75 years. I mean, shouldn't he be like old and just not even be in movies anymore? Well, no. Because there's so many different stories about him. And he can fly, shoot lasers out of his eyes. He can lift things about 200 times his weight, or probably even more than that. And all the ladies love him. The Man of Steel. Superman. The god of the world. I mean, the alien that came down to save the human race. Whatever you describe him as. Pretty much everyone knows him. Everyone knows about Superman. Everyone does. And they recently just came out with a new movie about him called The Man of Steel. And that was pretty much just amazing. Really, there's no other word for it. Don't listen to the critics, they're stupid. Sorry, critics, if you're watching this. I'm not really that sorry, though. The acting was fantastic. The way the story was set up. I mean, I almost cried, and I don't almost cry ever during movies. But I almost cried like 3 times. Because the way they did the story and the way they got you to know where the character Clark Kent or Kal-El or Superman, whichever one works for you, is coming from, it just got you emotionally involved with the character. And there were just some heart-wrenching moments where you're just like, oh, what would I have done in that situation? And it was just fantastic. And then there was just some moments in the movie that were just absolutely epic, and like you just knew what I was doing, and like the effects were so good, and you just wanted him to just beat the living crap out of the enemy. And he did. I mean, this is like the only Superman where he actually punches someone, and that's like groundbreaking. But I mean, there's this moment where Zod, that's the antagonist in the story, Zod. He comes down and he's looking for the codex for the race that has all the DNA of the race, so they can like repopulate. And he goes to Clark Kent's mother, and he's like interrogating her. He's like making her go flying like 15 feet back, and he's like, "Where is it?" And Superman, with his hearing, he zones in for a second. He hears it, and then it just goes back, and Zod continues to interrogate his mother, and all of a sudden you just hear this like missile sound, and Superman just goes flying and just like tackles Zod, and they go flying. They probably like are in the air for like 5 miles or something, and he's just like punching Zod in the face as they're flying. He's like, "You can't hurt my mother," and he just like is just pummeling him. And during that moment, you were just absolutely like, yes, like people in the crowd like clapped, like they were like, "Oh my god, that's so awesome!" And like every moment in that movie was right. Like the reaction from the characters was correct. Like that was what actually happened. Like Superman, he's not like in the other movies, like not gonna constantly save everyone. Like he realized that he couldn't save all the lives, but as long as he did this, he'd save most of the lives. And like he made sacrifices, and it was just the life of being a hero, and you felt the antagonizing pain in his heart, and you just knew where he was coming from, and like everything he did, you didn't even question it, because it was just correct. Like what he did is correct, and it was just a great, heavy, and just action-packed movie. Like there was no part where I was bored at all, and that rarely happens. Like I'm bored like all the time. I mean, and like there was no kryptonite. Like he was just extremely tough. Like him and his racers was extremely tough and hard to kill, and like bullets wouldn't do anything. But like him and his race could hurt each other because just how devastating their attacks were. But like his powers are a testament of his own personal belief in himself. So like he couldn't fly unless he completely believed in himself. Like as long as he knew what he was doing and why he was doing it, his powers were able to like activate because he believed in himself. And it was just kind of a genius way. And you know, when he starts flying, because he didn't know he could do it originally, but then he starts trying, and like he's like jumping and he's like doing these super jumps, and he's like finally gets up in the air, he's like, yeah, and he's like laughing, and he's like, oh god, and he's falling, but still at the same speed that he was flying at, and he just crashes through the side of the mountain, like the top of it, and just makes this huge hole in it, and he's like, oh yeah, and like he just flies off because he finally got the hang of it, and it just like you were just like it was just that adventurous spirit was just awakened, because like you felt like you were part of him, and you're like, oh come on, just fly, and it was just like being a kid again, and being like, oh, like discovering you had powers, and it just unlocked that thing inside of us that as a kid that made us want to be adventurous and curious and see what we could do, and it was just brilliant in that way. The story was like fantastic. There was many laughs, like people were sarcastic with each other, and like there's this one part where Superman he let them handcuff him, and you know he's talking to Lois Lane. She's like, handcuffs, really? And he's like, oh, it'll make him feel better. And then when like people on the other side of the wall the other people on the side of the wall in the jail were like talking to him, and he's like, oh, I can see you. He gets up and just like kind of lets his arms fall like to his side, and the handcuffs just break, and they're like, like all freaked out. And he's like, you can't control me, and that scares you. And it like just the way it happened was just absolutely clever, and it was funny and fun, and I recommend everyone to go see this movie, because if you do and they make close to $1 billion, they're probably gonna make the Justice League. And if they make the Justice League, that's just gonna make me happy. Little nerd particles flying out. And you know, this is also, I mean, if they do make their target amount of money on this, they're going to be making movies like The Flash, they're going to be making Wonder Woman, Batman, new Batman. The Batman The Dark Knight was a different world. That was the world where, you know, the other heroes weren't in. It was just purely a sanctioned world from the DC universe. And they're going to be making Wonder Woman, Flash, Aquaman, maybe not Aquaman, I hope they don't, unless they like rewrite them. But yeah, so they're just gonna be making all these DC movies, and it's just gonna be like Marvel. They're gonna do the same thing with Marvel, except with completely rewritten heroes and concepts of them, which is just gonna be absolutely fantastic. And I'm excited. And please go see this movie, because you're missing out, and you're like, listen, like if you don't see this movie, you're missing part of your soul. Like your soul is like out there somewhere, like part of it, and the other part is like, hey, go to the movies, see Man of Steel, because you'll be complete when you see it. Yeah, so fantastic movie, 10 out of 10. You know, people might be nitpicky about it, but for what it was, for Man of Steel, it was absolutely groundbreaking, and it just sets the milestone for other DC movies coming out. And if you go see it, I promise you won't be disappointed. Have a good day. Like and subscribe. You know you want to. Bye-bye.